So the topic of my speech is subprime mortgage crisis, or in other words, affordable housing. Affordable housing is usually not at the forefront of people's minds. Social issues such as tax reform, health care, or political scandals and news usually are. Yet housing is one of the most crucial issues aware of and not aware of. Based on the American Bar Association in 2016, 21 million families paid rent, although payments were missed in other areas. While renting and leasing hit lower income families harder in around 2016, almost 83% of renters had a decrease of $15,000, and these were where much of their biggest issues came from. This is a national issue, and that affects all races of people. And much of older Americans experience this on a large scale. For example, Enterprise Community Partners states that 1.8 million senior citizens devote more than one out of every $2 to their income, to their rent, excuse me. Usually to provide for themselves, they must rely on Social Security and on welfare. In cities such as New Orleans, Louisville, these cities have been one of the largest city sites that have senior citizens with proportion of cost-burden peoples. But what drives this chevron in American societies? The answer is, it is the acute shortage of affordable rental homes. Based on the United States Department of Housing, otherwise known as HUD, Urban Development report that in 2015, there were only 62 affordable and available rental homes for every 100 families with extremely low incomes. Over the past decade, it's gotten worse. And here are some personal anecdotes for people who deal with housing issues. You can watch episodes like Vice and such, and they interview people. And there's a woman from Cairo, Illinois. There's a woman from Cairo, Illinois, and she and her family they live in what is called McBride and Elmwood neighborhoods. And these homes are from the 80s, where the government subsidizes homes to private investors to build low-income, affordable housing for the people. But because of degradation over the years and lack of funding to the area, and as I said in the interview, a lot of the funding to the city was misspent and pretty much just misspent, right? And corruption ran through McBride and Elmwood neighborhoods. The Department of Urban Development wants to demolish these housing units because it's known as a dying city. Again, a single mother who struggles in Cairo, and she has to deal with these issues such as infestation and a housing entropy. Almost $7 million it would take to bring Cairo housing back to living standards, but due to federal funds not going to housing urban development, they are no longer able to build homes. And Housing HUD, otherwise known, cannot get private builders to invest in Cairo housing. Ben Carson, head of Housing Urban Development, he says that it seems unfair that the people who are here now have to suffer the consequences of mistakes that were made by others. Because of said circumstances, HUD puts a priority on health and safety. Because of the lack of standards, HUD has insisted focus on making sure that individuals have the basic necessities they need to thrive and survive. For many Americans, they are making serious compromises to pay for their homes and costs. Basically, 23% of Americans said that they spent more than half of their income on housing, and almost a third states that they fit in the definition of being cost burden. With this fact, more than 30% of their income was put towards having or living on accommodations. And again, on the side of elderly American citizens, they experience a phenomenon of working to not working. These stats come from the Huffington Post. From citing affordable housing, location and neighborhood trends of low-income housing, tax credit developments in 1990, It states that LIHTC, or Low Income Housing Tax Credit, units 58% lie in central cities, although minority 30% of all metro resides there. Basically, Low Income Housing Tax Credit is a federal government primary program for encouraging private equity and investments. Another aspect of American housing units is a child's school performance. For instance, in residential mobility and school performance, the affordable housing crisis, residential mobility of poor families and school mobility of poor children, it states renters are 3 times more likely than homeowners to move, with 32.5% of renters and 9.1% of homeowners moving in 1999. This may explain because of the racial minorities and low-income people are more often renters than they are homeowners.